doing that. I'm simply saying, and if you looked at some of the options that we have, that is by no means the only option. I mean, we can go ahead and originally, when we thought it was just the windows and the caulking, we were thinking we're going to take out the windows, we're going to take all the brick around the windows, we're going to take the cement over the top of the windows. That was our original intent. When we found that it was in other substances, then we started saying, hey, this is going to get more complicated. Let's buy us some time, which is basically all we're doing. That's why I'm calling this a short-term solution. Can we lower the limits below the EPA thresholds so we can open up in September and come back here and make those decisions? Because encapsulation could be an option. I'm not saying it would be my preferred option.
But you need a permanent fix, not...
Well, you know, you're going to have to help me, or you're going to have to convince me, and then, I don't know, how many people are in the town? 14,000 or so other people to think the way you think, that there's got to be a permanent solution, that encapsulation is not an option, because some people will come out and say, well, you know, that other option that you want is too much, and I'm good enough with encapsulation. And
but if you're getting the funding for it, why does it matter how much it costs?
Because the funding comes out of your pocket, my pocket, and no matter how you look at it, some of it is going to come from the town, and even if we get money from the state...
You can Google it right now. 110th Congress, Bill Text, 2007-2008, HR 3021 RFS. It's specifically about PCBs. It's in the Library of Congress. I mean, we're technology-based.
If I can find money under a rock, I'll go digging. And if the federal government is willing to give us money for it, not a problem.
I would, you know, Dr. Colley offered his email. Post what you've just said on his email.
Just send it to me. I'll research it. If it's a viable alternative to get money from somebody else's pocket,
well, it's always with the schools. It's always money. We don't have money. There are opportunities to do things. We just need to get them and allocate those funds.
Well, that's my point. But at the end of the day, the people who pay the money to make those opportunities available are going to have a say in the process. If the money's coming from the town, the townspeople are going to have something to say, and that's why we call the town meeting and the ballot. If it's the state...
But I'm saying if we've known this since May, and I've sat here and within 5 minutes Googled it and found it in the Library of Congress, school committee and everyone has since May to do this research.
Just because there are things that get proposed at the federal government level.
It was passed in 2007 and 08.
It may have been passed in 2007. The question is whether it was funded.
It is funded.
Well, you know, the funding may have been funded back then in 07. Has the funding continued all the way to 2011? And I will take a look. Don't you worry. I will take a look. We've also, you know, knowing that there have been some lawsuits, somebody gave me a lawsuit from a school, or it was a building that basically sued back to one of the companies that used to make the stuff, and I sent it off to the lawyers. I said, I don't know if we can do that.
Monsanto.
I think it was a Monsanto one, and I don't know if that's still available. So the lawyers have it. We're pursuing everything. So if you can email me that, it'll make it easier for me to Google it, and we'll call the, you know, state rep for Massachusetts down there and go, okay, go knock on that door, see if there's still money left in that little coffer. If they have it, don't worry, I'll ask for it. If they don't have it, we're still going to have to come back here and decide what is this town going to be able to do, and who's going to decide is who comes in here for town meeting and who goes to the ballot box.
So then if I can prove to you that there is money from the federal government, you will do what is necessary to remove, not encapsulate, not temporarily fix, but remove the PCBs in the schools. And test any other schools that were built before 1977.
If we get this bucket load of money, we can do many things. However, I'll go back with this just for now, and we're going to let this one rest. At the end of the day, what we want to do is have a long-term solution for that school. We may sit here and say, hey, we're going to remove it, and we're going to remove every trace of it, no matter where we go digging in the building. And at the end of the day, we may decide, you know what? After you go roofs, ceilings, walls, floors, this, the other thing, you add that up, we may come to the conclusion as a town that another option may be to rebuild. Or we may take a look at both those options and go, you know what? Those options are too expensive, and the people that come here and actually vote and go to the ballot box may say, no, for us, encapsulation is good enough. And I can't, I'm not the only one that makes the decision. It's going to be the people out there. I'm sure if there's additional money from some other pocket that's not the town's, I'm sure it'll make people a little bit more amenable to looking for solutions that go a little bit further, such as removal or rebuild. But until we've identified those monies,
has anyone searched for those monies?
Well, you're just making that pitch for monies from the federal government that honestly I didn't know if it was there, so no, I didn't search there, but I have been in contact with the MSBA, who does have some monies. It's limited. They're not going to give us lock, stock, and barrel everything they have, because they got umpteen other districts, 300 more districts, some of whom are going to have issues as well, and they want to help them too. So their help is going to be limited, but hopefully we'll get some of their money.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi, Leanne Ledger. I have a son that's supposed to be starting middle school in September. You discussed earlier that the samples you've taken have been in the middle of the summer. So, of course, the heat may be a factor with a higher level. What's going to, say you bring the levels down right now to an acceptable level, the kids start school. The winter comes, you add in outside air with the air that's already in the building, but the heat is on. The heat will act like an incubator and bring the levels back up.
Well, let's go there for a minute. Actually, that may not be a bad case scenario, because if we can lower the levels in the heat of the summer, I mean, right now the buildings are at temperature. So if we're at 80 degrees outside, the building's at 80 degrees. Even if we wide open the ventilation system, the buildings will never get to 80 degrees in the winter, because, to be honest, we can't afford it. Those of you who are students, tell me how cold the rooms are.
I've walked into the Macumber School and the elementary school in the middle of winter in a winter coat and short sleeves, had to take my coat off and still felt like in a sauna.
Well, I don't think that's been my experience in the middle school. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I've never been in the middle school.
Well,
I'm stating the Macumber and the elementary.
I'm talking about the middle school because that's where they're going, and you tell me. Which is part of the reason why we were going to replace the windows, because I remember sitting in one of your rooms, and I'm by the window doing an observation, and all I could feel was the cold. So chances are it will never be as hot during the winter time as it is now in that school. So when we're talking about the middle school, I don't think that will be the issue.
Well, for an example, with that said, I attended Durfee High School. Anyone who's ever walked through Durfee High School in the middle of winter knows there are some parts of the building that can be in the 90 degrees temperature, where people are in short sleeves, tank tops, but they walk across the campus and they feel like they're in the Arctic.
So I will...
So I'm saying is...
I'm going to thank Mike Duart, because we've gone through building by building trying to regulate it. Some of it, for example, in the middle school, we can only regulate it so far because of the construction of the building, including the windows. But we tend to be a little bit more consistent. I mean, here in the high school, no high school students here, right? I think by design, the hallways are colder than the classrooms a little bit. So when you're going between classes, don't stay in the hallway. Get your stuff and get back to class. But no, it's not that drastic. The older the building, the more difficulties we have in regulating the heat, and every so often you may have one of those units that goes wrong, and within a day or two we get the people here, fix it, and goes back to regulated. So we're pretty good with that. I mean, we're consistent. Unfortunately, it's more consistent on the cool side. What do we keep it at? 68? About 68. But you may be in a room that the temperature says 68 on one wall, but if you're by the windows, it may feel more like 60.
But I guess what I'm trying to get across is how, in the middle of winter, say you encapsulate some of the rooms like you discussed, what's going to prevent, if you encapsulate a room, what's going to prevent the toxins from, you said they went from the caulking in the windows into the cement, into the bricks, into the ceiling tiles. If you encapsulate a room, what's going to stop it from going into other parts of the room or into the ventilation system, and it's be a vicious cycle?
Well, part of what we're doing, again, is doing some removal. There may be some encapsulating depending on what the EPA allows us to do. Again, it's a short-term, temporary look at it from time to time, figure out, is it still holding? So there's going to be a plan in place that requires us to keep track of it, and we'll go back and test again. However, in terms of the ventilation system, like I said, it's room by room. It's not, it doesn't go from this room to the room next door. It's within that room. Now, when you open the door, can the air exchange from one room to the other? Probably, but it's minimal. So when we're talking about this, what we're trying to do is find a way to take those rooms that we know have high levels, bring them down, and replicate what we've done in those rooms in the other rooms, and then continually test throughout the course of the year, and hopefully we won't have that issue. If we have, let's try a worst case scenario. We do this, we clean every room in the building, we ventilate, we do everything we're supposed to do, and we start testing, everything seems hunky-dory, and then we have one room that spikes up. You know what? In the middle of the year, we may have to move kids out of that room and go somewhere else for that class. So we may have to do things like that. I mean, we won't take just one test, we'll probably do several tests in a row to figure out, okay, is it just this room, number one? Number two, is it a consistent issue? Number three, did we miss something? And at that point, we'd have to say, take the kids out, remediate it again, and then go back in and test. If the levels don't go back down, we don't use that room. So we will stay on top of it. This is not, and this is why I keep saying, short-term solution, trying to bring the levels down below the threshold, and then we have to come back here and figure out what we're going to do long-term.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to stop, and only because I have a personal issue, which I didn't want to bring up, but I have to let you know. My daughter was in a car accident last night, and she's fine. She's in another town, and I have to travel there because otherwise I won't get to see her tonight. We've been at this for 2.5 hours, and honestly, I got to go. So I'm going to give you this. My website has my cell phone, not my cell phone, my email. So many people have my cell phone. Ask a few of these people, they can give it to you. But if you send me emails with additional questions, we may even start a frequently asked questions on the website if things that are not readily available or haven't been asked or that we don't have answers yet, we'll go look for it, okay? The question is, can people help us make